Europe didn't explode in 1914 because some random archduke caught a bullet. That was just the spark. The real fuel? Money. Greedy, complicated, backroom, cigar-smelling, debt-stacking money. Before the first trench was dug, Europe was already fighting a quiet war, a financial one. A war of banks, bonds, and egos, where everyone was trying to look rich, even if they were broke as... Every empire had a tab open at the world's most dangerous credit card company, their own central banks. Germany wanted to flex. Britain wanted to stay king of the cash jungle. France was salty and loaded with revenge bonds. And Austria-Hungary? Let's just say that empire was basically the drunk uncle at the party still pretending he could dance. What nobody tells you is that World War I didn't start in Sarajevo. It started on ledgers, in interest rates, in gold reserves. The battlefield came after the spreadsheets. This video is going to peel back the polite museum version of the Great War and show you the dirty financial backstory, the shady money games that really pulled the trigger. And if you like learning how empires accidentally effed themselves with their own money printers, subscribe, or don't, and stay blissfully broke like a pre-war Russian peasant. Before World War I kicked off, Europe was basically one giant casino, and the chips were gold. Every empire sat at the same table, pretending the gold standard made them civilized. In reality, it just made them equally delusional. The gold standard was simple in theory. Every country's money was backed by real gold sitting pretty in some vault. It was supposed to keep everyone honest, but you know how that goes. Give politicians a shiny rule and they'll find 20 loopholes before breakfast. Britain, the self-appointed banker of the world, ran the biggest financial empire in history. London wasn't just a city, it was the Wall Street plus IMF plus Reddit pump group of its day. Every other country's central bank looked at Britain's Bank of England like it was a financial god, the OG money influencer. Germany, fresh off unifying in 1871, wanted in. After spanking France in the Franco-Prussian War, they took a massive war indemnity. Basically a you messed around and found out bill, in gold. And what did Iron Chancellor Bismarck do with it? He turned that French gold into the new Reichsbank, Germany's national flex machine. That's when Europe's quiet arms race became a gold race. Now everyone wanted bigger reserves, tighter control, more bling in the basement. Because on the gold standard, whoever had the most shiny metal had the loudest bark in global politics. It wasn't about who had the best army, it was about who had the deepest vault. France was paranoid, stacking gold like a doomsday prepper hoarding canned beans. Russia was broke but pretended otherwise, borrowing like a teenager with daddy's credit card. And Austria-Hungary? Still trying to make multi-ethnic empire a thing. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. By the early 1900s, Europe was tied together by an invisible web of credit, loans, and guarantees. A global game of who owes who. If one domino fell, the rest would crash faster than a crypto exchange after a meme coin dump. And here's the cruel irony. Everyone thought these financial links made war impossible. After all, why would countries bomb their own debtors, right? Yeah, that's cute. Turns out when pride, paranoia, and power mix, logic packs up and leaves the continent. Because soon, those loans and ledgers would turn into bullets and blood. June 28, 1914. Sarajevo. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, takes a wrong turn and gets shot by a 19-year-old Serbian nationalist with a pistol and no backup plan. Everyone learns that part in school. What they don't tell you is that bullet didn't just hit an archduke, it hit the entire European financial system. Because within weeks, every empire's carefully balanced debt structure started wobbling like a Jenga tower made of IOUs. Investors panicked, stock markets crashed, banks froze loans. Gold reserves were being hauled out of vaults like toilet paper before a lockdown. See, when the Archduke died, Austria-Hungary saw it as a perfect excuse to flex, to finally prove it was still a great power, instead of a half-decomposed empire held together by bureaucracy and wishing thinking. But to punish Serbia, they needed confidence, both military and financial. Problem was, Austria's balance sheet looked like a crime scene. So, they turned to their favorite sugar daddy, Germany. Berlin's response? Go for it. We got your back. That infamous blank check was less about politics and more about money. Germany had to show the markets it had deep pockets, that it could bankroll an ally and still keep the gold standard intact. Meanwhile, Russia, the big, clumsy bear, mobilized to defend Serbia. But mobilization costs money, and Russia's treasury was already a financial dumpster fire propped up by French loans. So, France found itself stuck financing its own potential extinction. You can't make this shit up. Britain watched this mess unfold like the cautious friend at a bar fight, knowing eventually someone's going to swing at them too. Their problem? They were the world's banker, the lender to everyone. So when Europe's markets froze, London froze with them. By late July, gold was fleeing the continent. Investors wanted out. They didn't care about honor, alliances, or national pride. They just wanted to get their money somewhere that wasn't about to explode. Central banks across Europe suspended the gold standard, the very system that was supposed to prevent panic. In other words, the great civilized financial order collapsed before a single trench was dug. The war didn't start with gunfire. It started when bankers realized they couldn't cash out. So yeah, Gavrilo Princip's pistol may have killed a man, but the real murder weapon was decades of financial arrogance, loaded by credit, primed by debt, and fired by panic. The second the war kicked off, Europe's gold standard, that sacred financial religion everyone swore by, got thrown straight out the window. All those speeches about fiscal discipline, balanced budgets, and sound money. Yeah, gone faster than an influencer's apology video. Within days, governments realized they couldn't afford an actual war with real gold, so they did what every panicking empire eventually does. They made up money. Central banks started printing like their lives depended on it, because they did. Paper money replaced gold, war bonds replaced savings, and propaganda replaced economic literacy.
Britain led the charge, introducing the Bradbury notes, emergency paper money to keep banks from collapsing. Germany followed suit, flooding the economy with Reichsbank marks backed by nothing but confidence and caffeine. France printed, Austria printed, Russia printed so much the ruble looked like it was melting. Every country was saying the same thing. Don't worry, we'll switch back to gold after the war. Spoiler, they didn't. And here's the darkly funny part. People believed it. They lined up to buy war bonds, thinking they were investing in patriotism. The posters screamed, "Lend your savings to the fatherland." Translation, "Give us your money now, we'll pay you back never." Ordinary citizens traded their life savings for paper that would soon be worth less than a sneeze. But they didn't know that yet, because the government drowned the truth in national pride. Meanwhile, the financial elites made sure they didn't get wrecked. Big banks got temporary guarantees, military contractors got fat government checks, and the press told everyone it was good for the economy. Classic move. Privatize the gains, socialize the losses. By 1915, Europe's entire financial system was running on fake promises and patriotic delusion. Gold was gone, inflation was rising, and nobody dared to say it out loud. Because if people lost faith in the money, the whole war effort would collapse overnight. So, the lie continued. And every country doubled down, borrowing more, printing more, burning through cash like it was kindling. They weren't fighting just the enemy across the trench, they were fighting economic gravity itself, trying to keep their currency alive long enough to win the war. But when you decouple money from reality, reality always wins. When the guns finally went silent in 1918, Europe looked less like a continent and more like a financial crime scene. The trenches were filled with corpses and the banks were filled with IOUs. Everyone expected some kind of peace dividend. Rebuild, recover, breathe. Instead, the peace treaty came with a bill attached. Enter the Treaty of Versailles 1919. Officially, it was about justice. Unofficially, it was about revenge and reparations. France wanted payback, not just emotionally, but economically. They wanted Germany to cough up so much gold it'd never stand again. The problem? Germany didn't have the gold. They had paper and pain. The Allies demanded 132 billion gold marks, a number so absurd it could have been plucked from a fantasy novel. To pay it, Germany had two options: tax its starving population into oblivion, or print its way to hell. They went with option 2. By the early 1920s, the German mark was disintegrating. A loaf of bread cost millions, then billions, then trillions. Kids were playing with stacks of banknotes like Lego bricks, and the once proud Reich became a global meme for financial disaster. The Weimar Republic, that fragile new government left holding the bag, got all the blame. But the truth? The collapse was baked in from the start. You can't demand gold from a country that ran out of gold 6 years ago. Meanwhile, France and Britain weren't much better. They were drowning in their own war debts, mostly owed to the US, who suddenly went from friendly ally to cold-eyed creditor. America basically said, "You borrowed it, now pay up." So the victors of World War I became debt slaves to their supplier. And the dollar started doing push-ups, getting ready to take the pound's place as global king. The so-called peace created a generation of anger, humiliation, and economic chaos. Perfect breeding ground for a failed artist named Adolf to start ranting about betrayal, gold, and national renewal. That's the real punchline. The shady money games that started World War I didn't end it. They just rebranded for the sequel. Different deaths, same delusion. Part 9. Modern parallels, different empires, same scam. Here's the part most people miss. The financial chaos that wrecked Europe a century ago, it didn't disappear. It just evolved, put on a suit, and learned PowerPoint. Back then, governments printed money to fund war. Today, they print money to fund everything. Bailouts, deficits, stimulus. The methods changed, the delusion didn't. The gold standard may be dead, but the addiction to fake wealth lives on. Instead of vaults full of metal, we've got central banks typing extra zeros into the system like it's a video game cheat code. Back then, it was the Reichsbank. Now it's the Fed, the ECB, and a bunch of other acronyms pretending to be grown-ups. Think about it. In 1914, governments promised, "We'll stop printing after the war." In 2008, they said, "We'll stop after the crisis." In 2020, it was, "We'll stop after the pandemic." Spoiler alert, they never stop. It's the same cycle, just faster and more global. Debt piles up, inflation creeps in, everyone shrugs because this time it's different. That's exactly what Europe said before it turned half its youth into fertilizer. So when you hear leaders saying, "Don't worry, the system is strong," just remember, so did everyone in 1913. A year later, they were paying soldiers in paper that wasn't worth the ink. Empires don't fall because they lose wars. They fall because they lie to themselves about money. Rome debased their coins. France drowned in debt before Napoleon. Britain bankrupted itself, winning 2 world wars. And now, the modern world floats on a mountain of invisible promises, derivatives, deficits, and digits. The First World War was sold as a clash of nations, but it was really a financial reckoning, a test of who could fake prosperity the longest. And spoiler, nobody passed. That's the real lesson. When money stops being real, sooner or later, so is power. Every empire that plays with fake wealth ends up paying in blood. So yeah, the First World War didn't start with a bullet. It started with interest rates, overconfidence, and a few bankers who thought they could outsmart history. And history, as always, sent the bill. If you're into stories where empires gamble with money and lose everything, hit that subscribe button, because this series is just getting started. Next time, we're diving into how one broke country printed its way into fascism. Hint, it rhymes with Weimar.